What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com, live on Facebook, late Monday afternoon. No big Packers news to talk about, but, of course, the world did watch the Philadelphia Eagles win their first championship in Super Bowl 52, defeating the New England Patriots in a pretty exciting game, although defense did seem optional for much of the evening. But thought I'd jump on, see what's up with everybody. Joan, hi, how are you? Jerry, hello. And see what's on your minds. Talk some Packers now that everyone is once again 0 for 0. 0 and 0. Everyone's either in first place, in last place, however you want to view it. Hi, Nicole. Ted, what's up, man? So, thought I'd come here, see what's up. Brian starts us off with Malcolm Butler to Green Bay. I kind of think it's a possibility, although it will be very interesting to see what the fallout is from his benching in the Super Bowl. I know there are a lot of rumors out there. I haven't seen anything even approaching concrete information on the subject, but he's a talented guy. You do wonder if maybe whoever ends up signing him in free agency can get him on the cheap at this point. But I do think he played well for most of the year. Obviously, the Patriots defense had their struggles early on in the season, but I don't think you can lay the blame of that on Butler. I think he would be an asset to the Packers defense, somebody they could use. I'm not so sure how much money they'd be willing to lay out for it, but I think it's definitely a possibility. Foles did not play like your typical backup. John, I would tend to agree, especially these last two games, the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. He played about as well as you could possibly ask, especially for a guy who steps in, 3/4 of the way through the year. There's no doubt that his experience as a starter in the league definitely helped him. I think his experience with Doug Peterson in Kansas City undoubtedly helped. Knowing the offense, knowing a lot of the things that he likes to do. But yeah, he elevated his game at the best possible time. And I think very deserving of the MVP last night, no doubt. I'd love Foles to be our backup. Nicole, I don't think that's going to happen. If he goes anywhere, it's going to be a starter. But he is signed in Philadelphia for next year. So if somebody wants him, they're going to have to trade for him. And I don't see the Packers doing that. Who has replaced Elliot Wolf as head of pro scouting? I believe that's a good question. I want to say John Eric Sullivan, but that could be wrong. It could be Woj. I'd have to double check on that. I don't want to give you the wrong information, but I do think it's Sullivan. So Shields, should we get first dibs? Sure, Chris, but I don't see the Packers making that kind of signing. He admits in his interview with Michael Cohen that he's one hit away from a concussion that would basically wipe out his career yet again. And on top of that, he's had off-field issues multiple times, which would tend to make you think that he's probably one strike away from a year-long suspension in that regard. So a guy who could take one innocuous hit that could end his season and or make one mistake off the field and be suspended for the year. I don't see the Packers laying out any kind of commitment for that kind of player. And I don't see anybody in the NFL most likely signing him. Unless, every once in a while there's a team that's going to think outside the box and maybe take a chance. But he's not going to be able to help you on special teams. And you're going to have to pay him at least the veterans minimum, which means you most likely have to play him. And then if one of those two kind of occurrences happens and he's wiped off your team for the year, then you've sunk cost, basically. Do you still see Cobb and Nelson both on the roster for next season? Yes, I do. Why do you think Malcolm Butler was benched? Casey, I have no idea. That is a great mystery at this point. I know there's a lot of rumors out there about events off the field throughout the week and leading up to the game, but nothing that even approaches concrete info. Always can go play for the Browns. Possibly. Can Rodgers catch a pass? Probably. We saw Brett Hundley catch a pass in Detroit. Rodgers makes that catch. Probably. Let's see. Mike Shields was the closest thing to a shutdown corner we have had in the last decade. I don't know. I don't know about all that. When Woodson came to Green Bay, he was pretty close to shutdown. And that was under a decade ago, wasn't it? What is the next big event? Most likely the Combine in 3 weeks. And then free agency, and then draft, and then the draft. I can't talk. Sorry. Ripkowski's future. Good question, Don. I think he'll come to camp, and I think he'll be in a big-time battle with Joe Carriage. Now, maybe something happens between now and then, but as things stand right now, looking at the roster, I think that's going to be a great battle to watch heading into camp. In fact, I think Carriage would have had a good bet of making making the team if he hadn't gotten hurt in training camp. Is a starting tight end on the roster? Ooh, that's a good question. I tend to doubt it. Although I think whoever they end up picking up, either through free agency or the draft, will probably split time with Kendricks. But yeah, I would tend to doubt it. But we'll see how it plays out. Wasn't Woodson a safety when he got here? No, Alex. He was started as a corner. He transitioned to safety later on. In fact, when he won Defensive Player of the Year in 2009, it was at cornerback. Who do you want us to go after in free agency? Preston, I get this question a lot. It's really hard to say until we see who gets franchise tagged, transition tagged, and re-signed. Because right now, I know most people are looking at lots of websites out there have lists of free agents and guys like Jimmy Graham, Ziggy Ansah, etc., who definitely would be big-time catches in free agency. The trick is do they actually hit free agency? In a lot of these cases, especially the bigger name guys, they'll most likely be either re-signed by their team or be given the franchise tag, which means they'll never hit free agency. So it's always best to just wait and see how that plays out. Now, I do think there are guys like, Morris Claiborne, who, again, he could be re-signed by the Jets, but that's a guy who I think could really help the Packers, who you wouldn't have to break the bank for, who had a pretty decent season and would definitely help them in a position of need. But again, I could say that, but he could very easily sign an extension with the Jets prior to the free agency opening up. So that's just something we have to wait and see, How many snaps did we even use? Fullback couldn't have been many. Ripkowski actually played quite a bit, intermittently. Like when they did go to two-back sets, they used him quite a bit. He didn't get the ball nearly as much this season as he did in 2016. But yeah, McCarthy has made no bones about it. He likes having a fullback in his offense, and he utilizes one probably more than most teams. But I don't think there's any question that there's a place for a fullback on the roster. Unless, now, I say that, and of course, McCarthy has stated that they're rebuilding the playbook, so maybe they phase it out. Who knows? Benjamin, what is Rodgers' contract extension going to look like? To quote our president, huge. It's going to be big. Not big as in large, although that too. It's going to be monster big. I said on a Facebook Live last week, it wouldn't surprise me if he'd approached $100 million guaranteed. 5-6 years, somewhere along those lines. Maybe a salary hovering around 28 million per year. I think they'll try to reduce his cap hit in 2018 as much as they can. But we'll see. I mean, Russ Ball and Rodgers representatives have spoken. They have started contract negotiations, but it's very early stages. So I would think it's probably going to play out over the summer. I would expect to hear something probably on the eve of camp. Vita Vey, Josh, I've said several times I really like that kid. If he's available at 14, I think they have to give it serious consideration. I'm not saying they should or will, but I'd understand it if they did. And I know people are so desperate for an outside rusher, they think that's a waste of a pick. I vehemently disagree. I think the NFL game is won in the trenches, and you can't have too many talented big men. The best teams come at you in waves, as the Eagles did last night. One of the reasons Brandon Graham was able to make the play of the game when he dislodged the ball from Brady's fist is because he was fresh. He has fresh legs. The Eagles were able, did that all year. Waves of guys up front coming after that's why they blitz so rarely. They really don't need to because they have a dominating front. That's time immemorial in the NFL, man. If you can win up front with big athletic bodies, you can play more guys in coverage. You're going to give quarterbacks, especially the more talented quarterbacks in the league, some problems. Now, obviously, Tom Brady didn't have a ton of problems last night because he went for over 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But the play that turned the entire game for the Eagles was made in the fourth quarter by a defensive lineman. And that's why, like I said, I don't think they have to do it. I don't think they're going to do it for sure, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Any big name defensive player entering free agency we should go after? I don't know about big names. Let's see how, again, like I just said, let's see how it shakes out. Transition tag, franchise tag, and re-signings before we kind of go grocery shopping in free agency. Imagine Rodgers with a top defense. Peter, that's what the Packers are doing right now. And I agree. You give that man, just even a little bit of support on the defensive side of the ball, and the Packers are instantly serious contenders. What grade do you give the Packers roster as is? Whew, that's a good question. I'd probably say a B- or a C+ if I was having a tough day. Butler being benched, Lloyd, it's the great mystery today. Does Butler not starting in the Super Bowl raise flags and lower his free agency value? I know there are 31 other teams that certainly hope so. We'll see what the market will bear. QB coach and Rodgers, Deb, nothing to worry about there. Mostly that was Rodgers just kind of voicing frustrations of not being included in the process. But you know what? It ain't his job to be included in the process. So last time around, he stated very publicly he wanted someone who had played the position to be his quarterback coach, and he ended up with Ben McAdoo, who's never played quarterback in the NFL. So, Rodgers will have his moments of, frustration, and that's fine. He's allowed to have those. But, I would just direct you to the interview he gave Packers.com on the red carpet at the NFL Honors when he acknowledged that change is part of the game. It happens every year. He was effusive in his praise of Joe Philbin being back in the fold. When, Philbin was last in town, they had their unquestioned best offense in the Mike McCarthy era with Rodgers at quarterback. So I think, obviously, in that moment with the ESPN interview, he expressed some frustrations. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot to worry about there. Andy, yes, I know. I watched the match. I don't need a score update on the Chelsea game. Thank you so much. Why you gotta put the salt in the wound, man? It's just rude. Did you see Aaron's comment about ending up someplace else? Yeah, I saw the interview. It was with the AP, I think. He's just acknowledging a reality. I thought my friend Zach Cruz put it perfectly on his post at Packers Wire when he said, breaking news, Aaron Rodgers knows how the NFL works. Which is all he was doing there, is saying, look, yes, I'm going to be in Green Bay for a long time still, but could I eventually end up someplace else? Absolutely. He saw it up close with Brett Favre. Brett Favre, who was a god in Green Bay, who absolutely helped turn the entire franchise around from the doldrums of the NFL to the pinnacle of success. He was shipped out of town, and if he can get shipped out of town, anybody can. That's all Rodgers was saying there. He is undoubtedly about to sign an extension that makes him the highest paid player in the history of the league. That will happen this summer. And then who knows how much longer he plays in Green Bay. Maybe it's 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. But at the end of that contract, every chance that he could either get traded or they move on without him because they found another young single caller. It happened to Favre. It could happen to Rodgers. Will it? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Did Capers take over for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Yikes, Alex. Adding a veteran wide receiver, a must for the offseason. Daniel, I don't know if it's a must, but I think it would be a good idea. We've talked here a number of times about a couple of options, but I wouldn't sleep on guys like D'Angelo Yancey making a big step. He looked very good down the stretch there in camp last year. I don't know how much they're going to want to shop in free agency for a wide receiver when they're set to pay $10 million to three guys they already have. Now, maybe, I say that, I fully expect them to restructure Jordy Nelson's deal, but we'll see. I have a hard time believing they're going to go wild in free agency at the wide receiver position. Where's Capers going to end up? Good question, Dennis. Only a couple staffs left to fill up, so we'll see if he ends up anywhere. Running back situation, Mark, I think they're pretty good there. Now, that wouldn't preclude them from adding somebody in the draft, maybe finding someone in free agency if the price is right. But, they got to like the kind of rotation they've got with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and Ty Montgomery. I mean, look at the Eagles last night. That's a team that has a bunch of backs, and they utilize their strengths. Packers can do the same thing. Trevor Davis and Jeff Janis future. Alex, I'll be surprised if Trevor Davis is back. I just don't see the upside there. I know he's fast, and that's his calling card. But outside of that, he's shown precious little ability from scrimmage, and he's shown questionable decision-making week in and week out as a returner. I don't think he can live on bad field position throughout the year. The trade-off being you get one exciting kick return on punt return throughout the season. I don't see it. Now, as far as Jeff Janis, I think he definitely has a chance of being back. I think they'll let him hit free agency, but they'll say, if you don't find anything out there, come on back at our number, and you can continue to be our special teams ace. What's going to be with Devontae May? What? Devontae Mays? I think they'll bring him in. They'll bring him back, obviously. I think he'll have a chance to contribute. He'll have to earn it all over again, so to speak. Obviously, those 2 fumbles to start his career didn't help him much, but I know they like him. McCarthy loves the guy, loves the way he runs. All the guys they have back there, he's probably their most powerful runner, but he's got to hold on to the football. I also really like Michael Clark. Yeah, Jerry, there's a lot to like there. Really athletic. You saw some of that ability there in the Vikings game. You saw the ups and the downs, though, in that game and the Detroit game. He's just incredibly raw. I mean, he hasn't played a whole lot of wide receiver in his life, let alone in the NFL. So the athletic, gifts are definitely there. It's all going to be a question of if he can take advantage of that and take advantage of having an off season, getting his nose in the playbook, really coming to town and taking advantage of a full off season in Green Bay. Chris, with capital letters, no, I don't want Janis back. Why not? If it's cheap and he's there to ensure that punt returners go nowhere week in and week out, and he's your, in case of emergency, break glass wide receiver, absolutely you bring him back. I mean, the world needs ditch diggers too. They can't all be like humongous stars. Expectations for defensive tackle Adams in year 2. Benjamin, for him to be active. I mean, the guy was barely played last year. I talk about a redshirt season. And I know there were injury issues early on, but you can't be too encouraged by what you saw when he was on the field. So obviously hope he hits the weight room, comes back raring to go, and starts lighting it on fire right there at the start of the offseason, because, I mean, as much as they were talking him up in the preseason and camp about his ability along the interior, I saw precious little signs of it from scrimmage. Now, he didn't play a whole lot, so maybe he just needs to get a few more reps under his belt, but they got to hope he takes a big jump. Possibility of Rodgers being traded? 0.000000001%. Because you can't really say zero, because, in the NFL, anything can happen, but it's very minimal. Is Reggie Gilbert a potential breakout player next season? Yeah, Sam, I think you got to be excited by what you saw week 16 and week 17 and how he ended up on the practice squad for the entire year while Kyler Fackrell was thrown out there week after week. I will never know. Lucas Patrick with a healthy hand, a legitimate starter? Maybe at guard. I think he'll get a chance there. Obviously he and McCray will probably battle it out at right guard. I think McCray is the better player. I think Patrick's a good utility guy to have bring off the bench, but I don't rate him as a starter. But obviously, he's got the offseason now. Hopefully his hand heals up, and I expect them to bring him back and let him compete. But I think it'll be much more as a 6-man type lineman than as a starter. Do you think Martinez's poor play in pass coverage was having to think too much or was slow to react? That's a good question. I think part of it was scheme-driven. You did see him get his hand on the ball quite a little bit. He just got to bring a few in. He had great breaks on the ball against Carolina, against Atlanta. He had 2 or 3 this season where he had his, if he just holds on to it, he's probably got 3 or 4 interceptions on the season. So you can't say that the ability's not there or that he's not capable of it, because you've seen it. You just want a little bit more consistency. I tend to think, the scheme probably contributed a little bit. He's just got to bring it down and be a little bit more consistent. Neil, what's up, man? Who do you think a good veteran backup QB would be? Ooh, Sam, that's a good question. It's hard to say because anybody who's on the kind of upper tier at the quarterback spot is going to want to go someplace where they can compete to be a starter, and that's not going to happen in Green Bay, obviously. Maybe a Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, would make a lot of sense. I know he's not a great quarterback, but you're not going to get a great quarterback to be a backup. But he has plenty of experience as a starter. I don't know. We'll see who shakes loose. It's hard to say until we see what free agency actually holds in that regard. Does Solo outgross Last Jedi? Brandon, I doubt it. But God, does it look good. Cousins, yeah, Ryan. Cousins is about to make $1 billion. He ain't coming to Green Bay. And Foles is, they're not trading for Foles, which is what they would have to do because he's not a free agent. Any news on Morgan Burnett? Nothing. It's been all quiet. I actually checked in last week, and there have been no contacts between the two yet. Now, that's not surprising, but we'll see as we get closer to the start of free agency if things heat up there. I think there's very much, it's a good question about whether they bring him back, where do they place his value, how much of a fit do they think he is in Pettine's scheme. That's a real wild card. They need to upgrade at the safety spot in general. But I do think his experience, his playmaking, his ability to communicate back there, I think they're all pluses that they have to consider. Let's see. Green Bay needs to learn from the Eagles, invest in players to win chips. Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to skin a cat. I do think Howie Roseman did a fantastic job of putting that team together. But you can't just look at a Super Bowl champion and go, that's the way to do it. Lots of different ways to do it. We're going to have a running game next season? I think so. They certainly had one when Huntley was under center. And you got to think teams will, with Rodgers back to full health, will have to pick their poison. I mean, look, when Rodgers came back for that game against Carolina, Carolina dared Aaron Rodgers to beat them. That's how they played it. That's why they ran so little, because they were stacking the box and daring Rodgers to throw. That's not going to happen with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. But Carolina knew that he would have some rust and knew that his arm probably wasn't going to be 100%. So they brought the house a lot. McCarthy and Rodgers both said after that game that was more blitzing than they had seen all year long. Most teams are not going to live that way with a healthy Rodgers. So I think that's going to help open up the running game big time. Eagles are studs. Dennis, they absolutely are. Kings of the Hill for now. Favorite Ted draft pick? Ooh, Peter, good question. Probably Mike Daniels. Mike Daniels or David Bakhtiari. Because it's easy to say Aaron Rodgers or maybe Greg Jennings. Like those are higher picks. But you get a player the caliber of a Mike Daniels or a David Bakhtiari, especially fourth round guys who are cornerstones on their sides of the ball. Bakhtiari especially, you get a lock solid top 5 left tackle, starting franchise left tackle in the 4th round. That's pretty fantastic. Any predictions on potential free agents? Greg, not so much right now. Does Bulaga play another snap in the NFL? Whew, Jack, that's a good question. I do think yes. I don't know if it's in Green Bay. A lot's going to obviously depend on his recovery. I don't think there's any way he's ready for the start of the season. And if he is in Green Bay, he's most likely begins the year on the physically unable to perform list. So if that's the case, maybe they do, cut bait and let him go. But we'll see. That's a really tricky one. Philly starting QB next year? Oh, it's no question. It's Carson Wentz. I mean, Nick Foles is a great story, and they'll thank him, and he'll be a backup next year unless somebody trades for him. Are you still thinking about not drafting Watt? No way, you have to wait 2 years. Yeah, what are you talking? Of course you have to wait 2 years. You can't say anything definitive after one season. It's one season. It means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. And you have to allow for the careers of not only Watt, but Kevin King and the linebacker they got in the 4th round, Vince Beagle. They got both of those guys because of the drop down and not drafting Watt. Vince Beagle didn't even play, but barely played last year after missing an entire offseason and the entire start of the season because of injury. You don't know what he is. You have no idea what he is. So this idea that you must have an opinion on it now, you must label it a failure now, is absolutely, positively, 1,000,000,000% absurd. Sorry, it is. How is Vince Beagle's recovery going? I would like to see him break out a little bit. It sounds like he's, 100% now. I will admit, he looked a little lost at times from scrimmage there at the end of the year, but he also didn't have a training camp, he didn't have an off season, didn't have any practice all year because he was injured. So, James Jones, bring him back. Yeah, no, that ship has sailed. Rodgers would have nailed that Hail Mary. Well, if you look at the throw, actually, Brady doesn't. It puts it pretty much in the perfect spot. I didn't need T.J. Watt nor Alvin Kamara. It's not a question of need. I mean, Kamara would have helped. There's no doubt about that. But that question wasn't about Kamara. The question was about T.J. Watt. And, can we allow more than one season to happen before we declare things a failure? You people in your Insta-Snap world, you need your instant gratification hot takes. You're not going to get them here. Press the exit button. Beagle not a stud like Watt. You don't know. You don't know. You literally don't know. You literally have no way of knowing what they are. It's one season. It means less than nothing at this point. Mark, move Matthews to the inside. I think they would like to. It's a question of if they can find somebody on the outside who's worth anything, who can actually win a one-on-one, who can wreak some havoc, who can put pressure on the quarterback. The idea was great last year too, except then that meant that they had to roll out Kyler Fackrell. We all know how that went. So, yeah, I think moving Matthews inside is the right idea. The question is then who takes his place outside, and I have to get that right. And Deborah will close us out with a Go Pack Go. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. It's always great to hear from you guys. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. Ryan Wood's got the odds for Vegas. They're up already, of course, for next season. The Packers are right there in the mix to win next year's Super Bowl. So the hard work, of course, is already underway in that regard for Brian Gutekunst and the gang there at 1265 Lombardi. I'll be back tomorrow and throughout the week. Make sure you're checking it out. In the meantime, hit up PackersNews.com. Thanks a lot, everyone.